Okay, let us begin. So today we are talking about the portfolio. Now, I can't stress how important this is. It's important for everybody. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about it in the context of level designer portfolios, which are a particular type of portfolio. And this will be especially, I think, relevant because all of you are going into, or most of you are going into 405, CGT 405 in the spring. Yes, I will be seeing all of you there. And actually, let me just set expectations for that class before we even get into this, because actually, statewide, do you do a version of 405? Can someone tell me, do the statewide students do that? Yeah, I'm getting shrugs. Maybe someone can tell me if you do a version of CGT 405. It's a portfolio review class. You can just put that in the chat if you want to answer there. But at least all of you here in West Lafayette are going to do 405 in the spring. And so you were all in 205 before, so it won't be entirely brand new to you. It's the same kind of idea. You kind of face the firing squad of professors. And actually, we hope to this semester, this spring semester, add potentially, Professors Kesselman and perhaps Professor Geary to the team as well. I'm not 100% sure. I know it'll at least be, the four, Dave, Dan, Professor Musas, myself. And it'll at least be us, but probably also Professor Kesselman and maybe Professor Geary. We're trying to have as many perspectives as possible because that's the key to that class working well. So again, if you somehow forgot what 205 was like, yes, you'll present your portfolio, we'll critique, and once we give you the thumbs up, you don't have to come back again. And so, it is a 0 credit class. Now, the big difference about this one versus 205 is in 205, that's the easy thumbs up. That's, do you have a portfolio website at all that looks decent? Is the about me, does it not have a bunch of misspellings in it? It's all very, very easy stuff, right? Because we don't expect you to have industry quality, industry competitive work yet at that point, right? So we're not really critiquing that, or at least we're not supposed to. Sometimes we do anyway because it's hard to resist making comments on things, but generally we're not supposed to comment on content. Now, 405, that is where we are going to comment on your content. We are going to say, look, this is competitive of entry level. Hopefully that's what you want to hear, or it's not. And here's what you can do, right? We won't just say it's a bad portfolio. We'll say, well, here's what you need to do, right? And really, at the end of the day, there's really no such thing. I know this is one of those lame motivational things, roll your eyes and all that, but I do believe it to be true. There's no such thing really as a bad portfolio, just a portfolio that needs more guidance than others, right? And that's what we're here to do, is give you guidance. It's not meant to be, intimidating, although I understand it for some of you, maybe many of you will be just by default, but we're not trying to make it that way. It's a very friendly environment. So that's 405, okay? That's coming for you in the spring. So any questions on 405, by the way? Because I think it is good to talk about these general CGT things because no one tells you anything, right? Okay, no questions there. Okay, so let's talk more specifically about the level design portfolio and kind of how they're supposed to work, at least according to me, right? Remember, this stuff is my professional, well-considered opinion, but still an opinion. There's always going to be variations of opinion on this. That's why in 405 we have a panel of people, not just one person. So one thing, even before I get into the content here, I just want to say, I've been here long enough that I've had, graduated students contact me for help, right? And so, this is a thing that happens sometimes. It's common, of course, and I'm happy to do it. I'm here for you. This is too valuable of an education for me to forget you exist forever after you're graduated. Of course, that's never going to be how it is, at least not for me. But generally, when I get these questions, and it has to do with level design, right? If someone is asking me about some discipline that I don't know about, maybe that's a different thing. But when it's someone that is in level design and they're contacting me and they're really having trouble finding work, generally it does boil down to this stuff, right? It really does boil down to this portfolio stuff. It's generally not. There are exceptions, but it's generally not like, I got called to an interview and all of a sudden my mind blanked and I just drooled in front of the interviewer for 30 minutes. Like I'm not, those aren't the kinds of things I'm hearing, right? Generally what happens is that they're not even getting to the point where their mind can be blank and they drool for 30 minutes. They're not even getting to that point. Why? Because the portfolio is what enables you to get to that point. That's the key. I think one of the mistakes that people make maybe subconsciously is they think, well, it's not important to nail this because once they start talking to me, once they start really digging into who I am and they're going to discover my greatness. Well, the problem is this is a pass-fail environment here, right? This isn't one of the differences between school and getting a job, all right, is if you take my class and you don't nail everything, you might get a B, maybe a C, something like that, right? And you go on your merry way. You pass the course, and also, I'm going to understand things like student X, they kind of loafed a bit on the art pass and they did this and that, but I can see the potential there, under the hood. I could see that. This does not happen with employment. Employment is a pass-fail scenario, at least at this initial stage, right? You get this one shot. You apply, they look at the portfolio, and it's not even someone like me at first. It's probably a HR person looks at the portfolio, an HR person that's been trained to recognize, what to look for, but it's still an HR person. If they see shoddy work, if they see a portfolio with grammar spelling mistakes, if they see weird stuff on it, unrelated things that aren't level design, they're going to circular file that, right? They're not going to look any deeper. You won't get to that point where you can have a conversation and they can discover the real you, right? So you have to have this to even get to even a basic phone screen. So it's really, really important to nail this. And it really is simple. Have a great portfolio. You will at least get the call back or the email back, right? And then after that, it becomes more up to you in terms of how you might do in a design test, how you might do in an interview. But you have to at least get past that first stage, and that's what the portfolio does. Okay, all that preamble aside, now for the actual content of the slides here. So key elements of a level design portfolio. You've probably read these, but I'll elaborate on them. So you want a clear narrative of who you are, right? What we often see in student portfolios, hopefully less and less because, with 205 and actually we're about to introduce 305 for the new freshmen, which is in between 205 and 405. We often see these portfolios that are a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And that's very easy to get at Purdue, right? Because we have you do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We have you do some modeling, right? You might have made a rig once. You might have drawn a concept once, right? You've done a lot of different things. You've experimented with a lot of different roles. And I think probably what some people think is, gosh, if I have all these different things, it'll show how well-rounded I am and how well-versed I am. Unfortunately, no, it does not work that way. You have to have everything on your portfolio be industry competitive. If you have something on there that's prominently featured, you could sometimes have like an other work or some kind of siloed off section of your portfolio just for like, hey, I have these other interests. But in terms of the main thrust of your portfolio, it should only be about the thing that you're trying to do. Okay, so you don't want to be a level designer that dabbles in modeling, that dabbles in character art. You want to be a level designer. You want your portfolio to be about that specific craft. And that's really true for the other disciplines, right? If you're going to be an environment artist, that's what the portfolio should be about. If you want to be a gameplay programmer, that's what your portfolio should be about. So again, you really want to focus in on a particular discipline with this. Okay, so unless you're a professional web designer, I highly recommend using a template. Don't try to reinvent the wheel on something. you want to work on your content, not on your structure. So let other people do that work for you. There's great templates out there. Now, I use a managed WordPress site that I pay for. But I know many people here use Weebly. I assume Weebly has templates and things as well. So don't try to reinvent the wheel here. Find a really good looking template, use that. But sort of your default mode of thinking with a portfolio is clean and easy to navigate beats complicated and pretty. Like, don't over design this. Again, this is a delivery mechanism for your actual work. You're not trying to wow people like in a Mario Maker 2 level, to reference Monday's lecture. Um, Now that said, don't be afraid to be a little creative. I mean, this is a creative thing, so don't be afraid to show some personality. But don't get overly cute either. It's a tough balance, right? And that's one of those things that's easy for me to say, but like, what is that line? I don't know. That's why we have portfolio review, right? That's why I encourage you, even individually, like email me your stuff and I'll have a look. But generally, a little bit of your personality coming through is fine. Okay, so more basic tips here. You want to make sure they get that strong elevator pitch from the start. Someone here tell me what an elevator pitch is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's basically it. Yeah. So it's just the quick, you know. I think you said 1 minute. I would even say like even mere seconds, right? Like length of. It's just a very short couple of sentence encapsulation of who you are. When I got started in the industry, my elevator pitch was something like, and again, I'm imagining I'm introducing myself to someone here. Hi, I'm Rob Howard. I am a level designer with a scripter emphasis, trained in Unreal, and I love making big events happen with scripting. That would have been something like my elevator pitch back then in, circa 2009. Okay, something like that, right? So you say who you are, kind of your primary, something. In my case, I have Unreal experience, which was just like now. I think important. In 2009, Unreal 3 was new enough to say Unreal 3 actually was sort of a big deal to say. And then I have a scripting focus, so again, just blah 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 blah, right? Just really have a nice pitch that kind of explain who you are. Now, more and more, I notice level designers will say game designer instead of level designer. I think this is fine. This is actually an interesting evolution of the role a bit. When I started out, you wouldn't necessarily do that, and the reason is you would think when you say game designer, you would think that this would mean that old school sort of notion of what that is. Someone that makes the 200-page GDD and is the creative lead of the company. Your Sid Meier, your Warren Spector, Hideo Kojima, Miyamoto, whatever, right? Like that has sort of evolved. I've seen enough successful level design portfolios that just say game designer. I think we understand now in the industry that level design is the method by which game designers get started, right? And certainly continue. We don't necessarily, most people in level design stay in level design and get promoted through, but you know what I mean. Like, we understand it's interchangeable now. That's kind of a tweak that I've noticed in the last 3 or 4 years. So it's fine to just say game designer instead of level designer on your portfolio. Okay, so we're going to look at some examples here. This is a friend of mine. His portfolio is fairly simple. In fact, I think it's defunct now because he's moved on from this role. So actually, what I might do is, well, I'll talk about it a little bit because the front page. But again, simple approach here. This is a background from, he's worked on Borderlands, so hence why he's got the background from Borderlands. Now, you might think, I haven't worked on Borderlands. If I wanted to do a portfolio of this particular style, you would just use a background of really cool work you've done. Okay, so don't worry about, oh, I haven't worked on Borderlands. If you have something that looks good, you can go that approach. Now, of course, this is kind of an example of someone in late career, how they would present themselves. He's advertising himself specifically as a lead level designer. Obviously, you won't do that. You'll just say level designer, game designer. Um, but the nice thing about this simple approach is that we immediately know who you are and what you do. There's no confusion. Now, I would say for you all, having this overly simple approach, you may want to have some visible work on your front page, not just have it be a big title card. This probably works for Hunter because of his level of experience. Okay, this is mine, which I desperately, desperately need to update at some point now. I haven't updated it since I took this job, actually, and I keep, I've had 2 summer breaks where I'm like, this is going to be the summer or I update this again, and it just doesn't happen. But because my last game was an Aliens game, it's not, obviously out of date on the front. But I do have my elevator pitch down here, right? And sort of my branding. So this is at least an example of that. So, I say who I am, kind of my, overall breadth of experience, that sort of thing. So this is sort of my current elevator pitch. That journey has run the gamut of garage-style game mods to freelancing, pursuing a master's degree, and finally professional work from a diverse range of titles. So here, when I started with the whole, I'm a scripting-oriented level designer of Unreal, I'm really focusing on, as I think you should, on the technical components of what I do, right? Because I'm new, because I'm entry level, what I really want to capture with my portfolio, of my elevator pitch, is that I know how to do this, right? I can step into your studio and do the thing. At this stage of my career, the goal of the elevator pitch does change a little bit. It becomes about the titles I've worked on, because sort of when you have that in your, when you have some big titles under your belt, that's an easier sort of grab, especially at the HR, human resources level. When they're just looking at your portfolio quickly, they'll see, oh, Bioshock Infinite, Batman, those sorts of things, and that will, help you get past that initial look a little easier. But when you don't have those, the next best thing is to say, I'm well versed in Unreal 4 and can do scripting. In other words, if you have big titles under your belt, you sort of lead with that. But if you don't, lead with the things you can do, right? Your technical skills that you have. Okay, so what would be the ideal level design portfolio? And you'd be surprised. I tell this to everybody, but so often, again, when I get people contacting me, help or whatever, and I look at their portfolio, it's not this. Even though, like not just from here, but even when I was teaching part time, when I was when I was working for game studios, I would say this. So it sounds so simple what I'm about to say, but you'd be surprised how few people follow it. So, this is important here. Okay, so I think for the entry level, now remember, this is sort of minimum here. You could have more than this kind of stuff. But minimally, we want what I like to call the 2.5, right, projects, right? So this is in recognition of how difficult it is to spin up full level projects and get them arted up appropriately, because that's another thing. You can't really have white box stuff. Well, you can if it's part of your process. If you're showing your process, you can, but you want to have your projects fully arted, again, for that visual pop, right? It's marketing. And so that takes a long time, right? The 3 projects you've done, you've spent like a handful of weeks on them a piece, and the one that you're arting is getting another couple of weeks. So now we're talking about maybe 6 weeks. And then if you keep working on them outside. So I understand. So that's why I say 2.5. Okay. So 2 full projects and maybe 1 mini project that could be maybe a single room environment that you've packed a lot of scripting in. Or if you're more of an art-oriented level designer, layout type person, it could be more of a visual set piece. But that's why I say 2.5. All right. When I look at a portfolio and I see 1 or 2 projects on it, that just doesn't feel to me like it's enough work to show this person can really do the job. If I see 3 different things, even if the third thing's a little smaller, that's a much better impression, in my opinion. You could have more as long as all the work is industry competitive. So remember, you can't have mediocre work on there just to have it. That actually hurts you. But minimally 2.5, I like to say. So in other words, 3 different projects they would see, but one of them can be smaller in order to make the scope of this reasonable. Okay, on each of these projects, so you have your 3 different projects, right? So on each project, you should have videos. Better if they are annotated, you know, with some either, you know, in later videos on my portfolio, I'll actually narrate. I think that's really good. But at minimal, you should have like, you know, some text that accompanies the video that explains what you did and why. And with these videos, the goal here is you got to imagine, okay, the HR person or the designer, at this point, it's probably some designer that's being asked to look at this. This is the deeper look now. You know, they want to know, they don't want to necessarily know the kind of narrative sort of, you know, the sort of behind the scenes like flavor of like, they don't want to hear things like, you know, this project was difficult because at Purdue it was raining every day and I had to go to the library or that kind of stuff. What they want to know is what you did. Like, hey, I made a really cool scriptable desk that has hidden objects in it, and why you did that. Because this project required a crafting system that had items inside a desk or something, right? So in other words, what you did or and why. Another example would be, I made unusually tight corridors in this level because I studied that cramped environments make for a more effective horror environment or something. Okay, so again, what you did and why. That's really what you want, not just the videos, but everything you do to show on a portfolio. Okay, so art complete levels show better. Now this stinks. I don't like this. I wish everyone could squint appropriately and you know, look at a gray box and understand the design brilliance in a gray box. But it is undoubtedly true that I can take a level designer portfolio, take the same level layout, same scripting, and if you do a kit bashing pass on it so that it looks good, it's going to get more attention than a portfolio that has gray box stuff. That's just marketing, folks. That's just basic. We're visual creatures, visual beings. We take in 80% or whatever. I've read that somewhere. I don't know if that's actually true, but something like 80% of all information we take in visually. At least I read that somewhere once. Someone can fact check that if that's actually any kind of empirically provable statement, but it makes sense to me. So having arted up levels is really important. Okay, now showing white box stuff is still a thing you can totally do when you show your process. And the better portfolios do this. They'll have like the finished, really awesome look, and then they'll be like, here's what I did for white box. Here's what I did when I, you know, put in the scripting. Here's what I did. You know what I mean? They'll show the process, but that initial look, the highlight reel, whatever, is going to be fully arted. Okay, so this is really, really old now. This is a Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare level that I made, and so obviously it's not going to be as good as like an Infinity Ward environment artist or anything like that, right? But you know, I spent a lot of time when I made this level arting it up to make sure it looked good. You know, even with the sort of limitations of that engine. Actually, every building is BSP, including the ones that have like blown out chunks and stuff, because you actually in that engine could, you know, do that sort of editing to BSP. It's all BSP with meshes sort of decorating it. And it does have a terrain editor, so you're able to make nice terrain. But yeah, this is, you know, an example of like, I spent a ton of time arting that up because it had to look good in order to, you know, despite, yes, my computer could not process really good shadows, blah, blah, blah. But still, I spent a lot of time because it has to look good. Now, you're never going to have it look as good as an awesome environment artist, but there's a threshold that I think any level designer can get over just by using a good kit and being an effective kit basher. I think making good looking stuff is within all of our capability. Again, I'm a scripting oriented level designer, not an art oriented level designer, yet I still manage at least like this level of quality. Although some of this is aging out a little bit just from the age of the engine. Okay, so what about supplemental material? other than the levels, okay, which I actually think matters a lot on a level design portfolio. So documentation is actually really nice to have. Your level design documents that you've made in this class, yes, by all means, edit them, give it another proofread, right? You definitely want to have them be as polished as possible. But yes, level design documents are really good to show. The analysis type papers, like the bonus project in this class, is those sorts of things are good. All, of course, must be high quality. But having that documentation is really good because it might even be the second most important type of thing you can have. Obviously, the level work itself is the most important, but second to that is the documentation, because so much documentation is written by the designer. So having examples of that on your portfolio is a big win, I think. All right, so just sort of miscellaneous tips at this point. Of course, only show your best work. A couple of amazing projects is better than many mediocre projects. And show the ability to think critically about your own work. What that means is you should really demonstrate, and the better portfolios do this, that you have a design process, that you have this ability to assess what you've done. Now, I do be careful about being critical in a negative sense about your own work on your portfolio. It is a marketing device, right? So always kind of have that wisdom. Don't bash yourself, but yeah, show the ability to think critically. Don't show other than your arted up levels. Okay, arted up levels is a different thing, because first of all, that's your work anyway, your kit bashing work. Don't show like individual models you've done, concepts, if you're not going for those positions. Don't distract us with other stuff. Now, you can have, because some people do this and it's okay, you can have like a other stuff section in your portfolio. You probably won't call it other stuff, maybe other work, but it's pretty clearly siloed off, right? Like it's kind of in its own corner. And if I really want to see that stuff, I have to click very specifically to get there. That's okay. But in terms of what everyone is going to navigate to, like the front page and the main projects and all that, really keep it focused on the level design stuff. Don't distract me with other things. Okay, so when in doubt, simple is best. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably enough. I mean, let me see, even if here's a good example. Like this, actually, there's a couple of these I need to remove eventually, but I have a link to my podcast here. I have, this is fine. Like to have it, it's just, you just don't want to hit people with it on the front page. And you don't want it to be like, my first link is games, right? Like my projects I've worked on. So, yeah, having it as a separate link in a menu is that's enough of a silo, I think. It just shouldn't be the first thing I see, is this stuff that has nothing to do with the main point of the portfolio. Um, okay, so team projects, so things like your senior capstone, 245, 255 work, that sort of thing. Really make sure you're demonstrating very clearly what you did. Don't do what even I see experienced industry people do this sometimes, and it hurts them. It's a mistake, even if you're experienced. Don't just toss a trailer to the game up there, right, on a team project. That's not good enough. That doesn't tell me what you've done on that game, and I'm going to wonder what it is that you've done. And I'll even interpret that a little bit as well. You're just basically trying to fool me with the overall, like that would be like me on the Bioshock page on my portfolio. Well, in fact, let's go to that. It's a good time to just pop over to my portfolio and hope that viruses haven't eaten it up or something. Because again, I haven't looked at it in a long time. Yep. Okay. Good. It's functional. All right. So if I go to Bioshock Infinite here, now if I go to the video is like demonstrating specifically something I did, right? And we've looked at this before in the combat scripting lecture. So, in other words, that's what the video is. It's not just a trailer of Bioshock Infinite, right? that would be dumb because that doesn't show at all what I did. So what I'm trying to do here is show specifically what I've done. So always keep that in mind with team projects specifically, because they're going to ask you that anyway. All right, so when I get this uploaded, which I'll do, flip the videos really as soon as I get back to my office here, I do provide some examples of really good portfolios. So I always like to point out this one, and so let me make sure that it still exists, because it was, in my opinion, one of the best I've ever seen. Um, okay, it still looks like it's coming up. Uh, Okay, yeah. And yeah, this is looks like he's still at Crystal Dynamics. But here's what I like about this person's portfolio and what I love people to imitate is this right here, the process. This is fantastic, right? So if I click, this is just all on the first page. So actually, you'll get here if you scroll down, I think. Yeah, if you just scroll down, you'll get here. Um, all right, so let me get to this. So he does an incredibly good job, like selling that he has a process, that he has a very specific way of doing things, that is effective, right? So he talks about, okay, I use SketchUp for my paper maps, and this is I do this because it's easy to read, easy to share, it's easy to make changes. And he even tries to do this thing where, look, when I do my paper map work, in other words, when he's working on his paper design and makes and uses SketchUp to make his 2D illustration, then he actually then takes that and then that becomes his white box. If I was interviewing him, I might critique him a little bit on that, but it's still really cool. Like I might critique that he's maybe losing a little bit of what you want a white box to do if you're just automatically taking a map and dumping it into the white box. But here's the thing, though. Even if I'm making that critique, we're now having this really deep design discussion, right? Like he's got this really detailed process, and as someone that's interviewing him, I'm like now debating with him that process. But that's where you want to be, right? That's the space you want to be in when you're interviewing. You want to be in that really deep design space. Yeah, I really like how he's laid this out, right? He talks about, okay, what do I do after I import it from SketchUp? He talks about like specific tools he uses. This is really good. Really detailed, really lets me know that he isn't just someone that is designing on the fly. Okay, he's someone that is experienced, knows what he's doing. That's what you want to portray yourself as, and it's somewhat independent from the titles on your resume, right? Like there are plenty of people that are level designers that got in the industry that don't have this, that don't have a great process, but they've just sort of stuck around for 15, 20 years and worked on a lot of things. So it's not a given that you have a really good detailed process like this guy does. So you should have that. Anyone can have that. Anyone can have a good process. Doesn't matter if you've only worked on student projects. So that's something I always like to push everyone to do. And so far, what I've seen out of the Purdue students, I've seen success with this. Okay, like there's been people that have used this idea to show their process on their portfolio and they've gotten jobs. So I know it works, right? I know it's impressive to people. Let me look at some of these others here. Of course, I always like to show Nathan's portfolio because he is, one of my great industry mentors. That would be curiousconstructs.com. It's also really good just educationally because he's got like really good educational concepts, for level design on his. So again, this is a different style, but again, like I love how down here he's got kind of what makes him tick, right? In a very easy to follow way. Of course, he hits you right away with like, oh, here's my, again, that's probably the one thing that's going to be frustrating to you when you look at these professional portfolios is you can't do this thing yet, where, you're showing off all these, as you can see, his career goes way, way back, right? So these are pretty old games, all the way up to Mafia 3, his last release. He's working on stuff now. But again, I really like how he summarizes who he is here. So you kind of can't go wrong by imitating these professional portfolios as much as you can. I'll go before we wrap up here. I'll just go back to mine and talk about a little bit what went into mine in terms of my thinking. Um, so I made the mistake that so many level designers made when I initially sat down to make this portfolio in like 2016, which is I tried to reinvent the wheel. I spent way too much time, not using a template. And one of my artist friends was like, "You got to let me help you." So that's actually the wife of the level designer, Hunter Wright, Jessica Nita Wright, who's a game artist. She stepped in and said, "Hey, look, you got to let me help you. Look, use a template." So a lot of those tips come from her. So I thank her for that. And so really what I'm trying to do here, if I look in my game pages here, this is the one I have to update now because it's not just Cold Iron Aliens game. It's actually a release game now. So that needs to get updated with stuff. But we'll start with BioShock again. So what I'm trying to do again is show as easily as possible what I've done. Now, the photo gallery, this is all of stuff that I've worked on, but it is more just for HR splash, right? It's not explaining anything. So it's fine that it's here, but it's there just because I think it's good to have nice looking screenshots. But they're all from parts of the game I worked on. And I do say what I worked on here in a general sense. And then, of course, the video again of a specific encounter. And then what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to explain exactly what I did in my discipline, level design scripting. So again, I'm just trying to make it as easy as possible for an employer to look at what I did in particular. Okay. And of course, my famous barrel story that I bore everyone to tears with is mentioned here. And then I have an audio tab on every single project because that's kind of a part of who I am. So I always like to mention what I did that had to do with audio. Most projects, especially later in my career, usually had something. And then this would just be, the basic project details, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, the publisher platforms, all that sort of thing. And now for you, this won't be, you'll just have projects, right? What's going to happen as your career progresses is you'll end up needing to separate these things. So these are like, when I say mods, these are levels that I made, on my own outside of a job, with tools that I acquired, just like you would do, with Unreal Unity or downloading the tools to a specific game or whatever. And then these are just, and hopefully as my career at Purdue progresses, I'll be able to put more things. These are just like projects for fun that I would do, usually to exercise skills. I used to have more than just this. I don't know why. I just made, I just baked it down to just this. I'm not sure why. I had an Unreal C++ thing back in the day. But again, my purpose of this is just to show kind of that I'm really interested in game dev. That level design is my main thing, but like I go and I do other stuff too because I just love it, right? But it's got the same idea, right? Photo gallery, video, audio, all of this. If you're curious about this, and you can actually download it, look at the code, the C# code. This will be very familiar to you if you've taken game scripting and coding, even though it's Unity. It's this obsession I have with making everything into a turn-based RPG. I'm kind of obsessed with that as a general concept. And so what I did is I took football, American football, and made it into like a turn-based thing where instead of like attack magic item, you have run middle, run sweep, pass mid-range, pass long. And we'll close out just by looking at the video for this purely for fun, just because I think it's kind of an amusing project. And by the way, what these sprites are, I did draw these sprites myself, not that they're that impressive, but they're literally the Tecmo Bowl sprites that I just traced over them. Like, so I did make them, but that's why they look like the Tecmo Bowl sprites. So yeah, this is chiptune music I did. So, but yeah, you pick the play, and then you see a little animation, and then the down and distance updates and all of that, right? So I'll fast forward to like my cool little service to the player moment in this. When you score a touchdown, you get to like pull a lever on a slot machine to win an item. Let's see if I can find where that happens. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is totally goofy and based on all the JRPGs I play that do goofy things like that. So anyway, that's the football project. So it's cool to have stuff on your portfolio as side stuff to show that you love game development. All right, it's 1 minute late now. We're totally done. Um, and I apologize for forgetting to stop for questions. So if you have questions, you can talk to me now. Certainly next week, if you think of any, I'll try to remember to ask if you have portfolio questions. Yeah, Brantley? I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I think that that's a fine way to go. Yeah, as long as you're very very clear that that's what happened. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Totally okay. Yeah. Yeah, because what we're looking. I mean, we're supposed to just be looking at the design, right? We're really not supposed to be influenced by the art, but we are. So when you make it look good, it benefits you. But no one, like if you say, well, I bought an asset pack from Unreal and I kit bash. First of all, kit bashing is a legitimate skill that a level designer should have. So that's like really good to show that you can do that. But secondly, yeah, I mean, we're looking at your level design. We're not going to think that you're plagiarizing or cheating. We're going to expect that, right? Would be shocked if you made all the assets, you know. Yeah, that's a good question. And by the way, everyone is free. I'll keep. No one comes into this class actually, so actually I'm totally fine just to stand here. Statewide people, you can leave the WebEx if you want. I'll keep the recorder going to capture these, but like no one's coming in, so I can just answer these questions. So that's a good question about what if I made a Doom, mid '90s Doom level. I think it does actually probably hurt you a little bit, actually, because again, it's like it's going to give the impression that your expertise is in retro games. Now, exception, if that was what that company was doing, like there have been like retro themed FPS games that have come out, then that would actually help you for those. Um, yeah. It might be okay if you're mixing that into a more modern environment. Is that what you're talking about? Where it's like a modern environment, but you're using these flat sprites for kind of a artistic effect. Is that what you're talking about? I think some of that can be okay. What I would just in general think about with all of that stuff is there's sort of this difference between art and marketing in general, right? Like we're being really mercenary when we sit down to craft a portfolio. Like we're like, what can I do to get a job in the North American video game industry? What's going to sell me to these companies the absolute best? And I'm going to in a very mercenary, very shallow way, just gun for that, right? Now, that said, I think every company wants to believe they're hiring a great, full of depth artist, right? When I say artist, I don't mean game artist. You know what I mean? Like an artisan, I guess, is a better term. So allowing some personality to come through in the work may not be bad, right? As long as you're also showing that you can operate in that modern space. It's a tricky balance there. The easiest way is just to make like, well, look, I mean, I'll tell you, like at the school I went to, the people that always had instant success were the ones that made when I was in school, like the really, really, really awesome Oblivion mods levels, right? And then later on, it would become the Skyrim ones because they look good, because they have like pre-done assets that snap together. And so when people would go ham on one of those and make a massive level with like all that stuff, okay, like sure, it may actually take less creativity than someone that made something in Unity where they're building everything from the ground up. But what looks more impressive, right? And that's the balance. It is a game. It is a dog and pony show. In some ways, right? Which is why this here, even though it's kind of amusing to look at and I'm proud of it, I would never lead with this ever, right? Like it probably took more work to make this than anything else on here, just because I'm building a football simulation from the ground up. But I would never lead with that, right? Even though now, if you're a programmer, the game changes completely, right? For programming, right? Like programming portfolios are like they can be like Web 1.0 awful, ugly looking websites. And if they have like awesome GitHub links to like, massive code repositories and all of this, then they're golden, right? It's just a different world. But for everybody else, it's a marketing showcase thing. You know. Yeah. For our industry, yeah, the whammy bar is going to be photo real stuff. It's going to be like, things that look realistic, dirt, grime, all the things that we complain about seeing too much, frankly, is going to be what you want to have. You probably don't want to have the bright, colorful JRPG look, sad as that is to say, because I prefer that. But like, when you think about like the difference between how a Naughty Dog game looks, and bye bye statewide, I'll go ahead and I'll keep talking, but I'll end the meeting here.